So today in Shed Talk, I know you guys like this format whenever I do it, we're going to be talking about something that I think is pretty big in the psychedelic space at the minute. Obviously I'm mainly going to be reacting to Boogie2988 taking psychedelics, specifically mushrooms, in the latest documentary that just released on him. It's by Mike Chum. I hope I'm getting that right. This is all off the cuff. This is just me talking about my own perspective after watching this video a few days ago. I've actually watched it twice just to get a better understanding of what was going on. Anyone who doesn't know Boogie2988, probably one of the original YouTubers, as he likes to mention quite a lot in the video. I used to watch him when I was younger. I mean, I've been on this platform since 2009. I'd say a bit earlier actually. I've been watching YouTube since, say, the very, very early days, as it was just taking off. I remember my cousin showed me at my house with his cousin that I wasn't related to. Well, you know, one of them mutual family members, whatever. Here we go, the tangent begins. But yeah, that was my first introduction to YouTube. Just I remember watching just random Family Guy clips.
Lewis! Mom!
And then it wasn't until I really discovered Boogie2988 that I was like, oh, this is really what it's about, isn't it? YouTube. It's about being able to put yourself out there to the world through a visual format. It transcended the online forums of the early internet, where it was more of a personal connection that you could have. And it really catalysed the vlogging zeitgeist with stuff like Boogie's content back in the day. And he was a very wholesome character. Anyone who used to follow him and watch his videos, and anyone who's watched the documentary knows that when you contrast his sort of downfall arc versus his initial arc.
Why not use your only life to make the lives around you better? Fuck you, it's none of your fucking business, it's my body, it's my choice, eat shit.
Of content creation, there's a massive dissonance in the way he presents himself. So in the beginning he's very humble, he's quite philosophical, lots of great life advice for someone who clearly struggles with life, being quite a large individual. And then on the flip side, after he had the downfall arc in the past few years, where he's just been, I mean, he's literally a felon, isn't he, in the state of Arkansas for, was it alleged assault? And yeah, you can see that his whole perspective on life is very jaded. He actually is diagnosed in the video with covert narcissism, which I thought was really interesting, because I remember when I was analysing Boogie's behaviour over the past 5 years, it definitely seemed that there was some form of mental disorder in the vein of that. But what we're really talking about today, however long it's taken me to get into this, is the fact that at the end of this documentary, which I recommend you watch before you actually hear me saying this, is that he gets in contact with a shaman, because he tries all the things. He tries liposuction and whatever he has, like gastrointestinal bypass surgery or whatever, to sort his weight out. He can't sort that out. He can't sort his mind out. He's obviously clear. The thing is, before I get into it, I want to say that me personally, I've never had anything against Boogie at all, or any of these people that I'm going to talk about. I'm going to be talking about Jake Paul later on in this as well, because he's also just had an ayahuasca ceremony and apparently an experiment with the toad, Bufo, and also another thing that he called, can't quite remember. I'll put the video here where he talks about it in this podcast with Aubrey Marcus, which is fascinating. I've not actually finished it yet. It just took me by surprise last night, where I just had this idea. I was like, oh my god, the psychedelic revolution that's occurring in this day and age. Obviously there's been many psychedelic revolutions, but the one that's really taking off now is now infiltrating the deepest realms of the mainstream with Jake Paul and Boogie, these huge influential online figures, especially Jake Paul, I'd say. And it really is just the catalyst for their redemption arc. So obviously what happens in the Boogie2988 documentary is he goes to this shaman because he's been hearing about psychedelics and how they can sort of unearth trauma and let you process it and just work on yourself as a better person and develop yourself spiritually, the whole shebang. And obviously he takes these mushrooms with a shaman, the classic, hey man, it's all love sort of stuff, funky neo-shaman type of spiel. But yeah, he takes these mushrooms and he just has the classic trip. He's pissing himself, he's laughing at everything, he's realising the utter bullshittery of sort of the human ego existence and how he's very much led his life for for a great chunk of it, and he goes back to his childhood. He's clearly unearthing a lot of trauma, facing his pain. And you know what? I massively respected him for this. Obviously, I don't agree with any of the things that Boogie's done over the years. I don't advocate for him at all, but I've never judged him ever, really. Obviously, I've had a laugh with him with my mates. I mean, when he was fighting Wings of Redemption, that was just far too amusing. But I've never judged him whatsoever. I'm not a judgmental person. This isn't me trying to say, oh my God, I ever sinned, I don't judge anyone, because I do. I'm still an ego at the end of the day. But for people like him who seem to have had, I mean, I've been exposed to him for many years now. I understand the downward spiral that can take place when you're in this sphere. I mean, I'm nowhere near as big as they are, but just in terms of being a human, you can empathise with these people, or at least I can with Jake Paul and Boogie, who they're living a life of extreme temptation. As Jake Paul says it, the devil hides in the holiest of places, which is interesting because, in a sense, I'd say LA is not a very holy place, but I understand where he's coming from. Holy in the sense that the things that the devil hides in, like behind pleasure, like, I don't know, sex, money, drugs, alcohol, which I guess a lot of people would perceive as unholy, but in a sense they can be holy because they can produce great pleasurable effects and also great times of bonding with your friends and other people. And obviously the way you use them can be very wise, but it also means that because the devil is hidden within everything, you can turn anything into a devilish pursuit. He very much got caught up in that, and he says in the thing, he's like, more, just wanted more, keep going, never satisfied. And him and Boogie have this very similar parallels, obviously two very different characters, but the fact they're both from sort of the influencer scene and the big YouTube scene of making more and more money, more views, more this, more that. The Psychedelics, and obviously Jake Paul says he's done breathwork and meditation, and a lot more of the stuff that I say Boogie's not really really dabbled in yet. It's very clear that they've come to a realization of the illusory nature of the finite self, of separation.
It brings you to a dimensional reality where you merge with not only source consciousness, but the somatic felt experience in your body of what the only word that you can use to describe it is God. Now, God is a complicated word, so you can use source, you can use universe, or you can use capital L, love, whatever you want to use, but it's God. And it merges you with that, and anything that's obstructing your ability to access that, any pain or anything else that's there, is going to come up.
I mean, Jake Paul's gone even further. He talks about in this documentary of Aubrey Marcus. I mean, they're very much aware of what God really is. A very, very loaded word, as they say as well. But God, whatever the infinite nature of the self is, the source consciousness that you reach via extreme meditation, Bufo, which is obviously 5-MeO-DMT, purported to be like the strongest of psychedelics. Obviously it's stronger out there, but it's the strongest that everybody knows of nowadays. Because back in the day it was, oh, DMT is the strongest. No way, 5-MeO-DMT is the strongest. No way, it's 5-MeO malt. Like, it never ends, the rabbit hole never ends when it comes to these mind-bending psychedelics. But obviously he's experimented with a lot, and the ayahuasca journey that he had, that motherly element really brought out a lot of deep-rooted trauma and what's interesting about it is that little aspects of your life where you might have ignored someone and you made them feel a certain way but you didn't even think about it, and it'll bring that up. It's really fascinating. I've never done it, but obviously I know a great deal about it and how it goes down. Maybe one day I'll do a trip report of myself. Trip report by myself. Oh God, words. So what's really fascinating about Boogie2988's revelations at the end of the video, he uses a lot of the terminology that say I used to describe life like.
None of this matters. None of it. It's all a construct. It's all a simulation. It's a fucking video game.
It's a fucking video game, man. And it really is an infinite sandbox video game making to an MMORPG that we're all collectively creating. But then sometimes it feels like Gary's Mod, everyone's fucking ragdolling all over the place. Sometimes it's like Minecraft. It's elements of all these giant open world RPGs. Every game ever, every genre of game ever, life can emulate in a sense. And it's very ironic, obviously, Boogie being sort of like a video game obsessed individual. I love it when he's like, well, Diablo 4's out, I gotta get that. Tears of the Kingdom, I gotta get that. Even though he's sat behind all these arcade machines, struggling to pay the bills, and he could literally sell all of these, but obviously he's very much attached to his material objects, as many of us are, but he is seriously so, to the point where he's ready to go bankrupt before he sells this stuff. And the mushrooms really help him to sort of alleviate that attachment. He wakes up in the morning and says, oh, I didn't immediately want to get breakfast, something, say, indulgent. Oh, my first hit of like dopamine in the day, let's get some food down us. He didn't feel the need to do that. And then he talked about being in control of himself for the very first time, which is another quality of psychedelics.
God damn it, I feel like I'm in control. I feel like I'm in control of myself for the first fucking time.
That can come up after you have these sort of deep, eye-opening experiences where you realise, oh, wow, the real self, the pure self, the higher self, God, whatever you want to call it, anything, the consciousness beyond the ego finally takes hold of the body which it's choosing to occupy, and the ego loses control. This is very much the path of shedding the ego and realising the true nature of self, because at the end of the day the ego has to get battered a bit to be chipped away, and this is oftentimes why people go crazy on psychedelics, because they don't want to let go. And this is when you people like flinging stuff all over the room or running around Manchester naked, as yours truly did. So really interesting to see Boogie do that, and I actually wish him the best. And I really do hope he turns it around. Whatever I might think of the way he lives his personal life with his very young girlfriend, although not illegal, that must be said. Whatever I think of that, or how he chooses to live his life, I would not choose to do myself. I'm very much happy for the fact that he's chosen the path of psychedelics, even in a very brief stint, to sort of bring the devil out of him and get his head kicked in. Because realistically, the devil needs to be beat for the light to take hold. Otherwise, the corruption will just lead you down a path that will not only hurt you but can also harm others, as we've seen with Boogie when he goes outside with a gun. It's just the devil in it, the devil inside, and it's in everyone, it's in me, it's everywhere, and it exists to be overcome. That is the beauty of life, is that love can destroy these things, and the evil, sort of, this is my worldview, the evil exists there to allow the love to destroy it, and that makes the game of life so much more gripping. I find it so fascinating that psychedelics are reaching these people so deeply. It's not just, oh, I had a few mushroom chips at this party and I had thoughts about the universe and pretty cool. It's like, oh my god, I'm actually realising the nature of infinite self. It's absolutely fascinating. Please go and watch these videos that I link, because if anyone's interested in the current movement of psychedelics and how the culture's taking off for the whole gamut of human culture, I think these two pieces of content are really helping out this whole movement. I know a lot of you will be like, oh, I hate Jake Paul, I hate Boogie, whatever, them mincers, the gimps, or whatever word you want to use to describe them, but mate, give them a chance. If you're an open-minded psychonaut and you care about healing and redemption arcs, I love a good redemption arc, you've got to just open yourself to the fact that people can change, people can get better, and they can turn life around for the good, for the better of themselves, and for the betterment of other people. Obviously, I'd say Boogie's still got a long way to go. He needs to sort out the foundational aspects of his life once again, because he's really just clearly off the rails. But Jake Paul really does seem to be doing a lot of good, and the fact that I've just said Jake Paul is doing a lot of good, I know it's going to trigger loads of people, but it is what it is. Watch that documentary before you make any assumptions of who he is now. It's the beauty of say, being the devil in Jake Paul's sense, being this rowdy, hedonistic dickhead, is the fact that when you turn it around, the beauty of shedding that egoic backlog really can produce some of the very best people. Great example, Eckhart Tolle. I know many of you know him for The Power of Now and A New Earth. Probably two of the most famous spiritual personal development books out there. And obviously, before he got into spirituality, before he had his awakening, he was extremely depressed, literally, basically on the verge of suicide. And it took him to the very day to be like, right, this is it, this is the day. And that's when he had his awakening. Obviously that wasn't facilitated by psychedelics, but it must be said that a lot of people don't reach that point, and that the beauty of psychedelics, even though it can be very intense, and I think that they should be, if they're using it to bring out trauma in these extremely egoic, devilish individuals, I think it really does need to be done in a controlled environment with an experienced shaman, someone who really knows what they're doing, an institute or whatever where people go to do this, where it's regulated and safe for people to do it, because a lot of the times people can go pretty fucking crazy, man. But I'm very happy that it's worked out for Jake Paul and Boogie2988. Obviously, a great thing Jake says is that you think you could do ayahuasca or any of these psychedelics, it's like, right, it's it, I'm fixed, I'll just do it once, and it's nah, you'll always come back to it, because the spiritual path just doesn't end in a sense. It's going to go on your whole life if you're serious about this.
And it's a never-ending process. It's like going to the gym. I think a lot of people, and I think maybe I thought this too, maybe, like, oh, I'm going to go do ayahuasca once, and I'm going to be good.
Yeah.
You could, like, that's so far off.
And for some people, it's not right for it. It might not work, but oftentimes psychedelics really are the window to seeing the true beauty of life that you've been clouded from after being too immersed in the video game. Because there's so many video games out there. You could be playing some super normie, generic first-person shooter Call of Duty bootleg rip-off that's like the easiest game ever, and literally just on rails, and it's just like, oh, pure dopamine, I shot the guy. Or you could be playing extremely in-depth strategic RTS games where you have to think about stuff, really take it seriously. Again, not saying one is better than the other, but you will get a deeper, more enriching, engrossing experience out of the more in-depth, challenging games that reward you in a longer-term sense rather than a short-term gratification sense where it's like, oh, dopamine. Whereas on the other end, it's like, oh, long-term satisfaction and a deeper understanding of life and who I am and the challenges I exist to overcome. But yeah, what did you guys think of it? Because I know obviously these are two very controversial characters, and I just have to say that, yeah, quite clearly I don't advocate any of the stuff that they were doing beforehand. But for me personally, when I look at these characters, these personalities, I just think, wow, there's someone inside there, there's a beautiful human, a beautiful soul in there that's been trapped by the egoic desires that the devil itself will drown in and drown out the truer self. So I really hope that you guys understand that this stuff is taking off. Psychedelics, it's getting really, really big now, and it's not going to stop. This again is the most amazing thing about being involved in this space, in this niche, which again is, I guess is a niche, but people who you'd think would never even talk about this stuff or even do it or go that deep with it are doing it now. So it's really changing. It's taking over, boys. And I couldn't be happier to be involved in this space, talk about this sort of stuff casually. Because at the end of the day, I'm not Terence McKenna. I'm not a scientist. I don't have any credentials. I'm just a guy who's had a lot of experiences and insights. And for me, the persona I want to channel is just the normal, down-to-earth, everyday guy.
It's everyday, bro, with the Disney Channel flow.
Who has happened to stumble upon these extremely mystical experiences via these substances, and also, well, sober awakenings and sober visions that I've had as well, because it's very much not just constrained psychedelics. It can happen via breath work, which is awesome that Jake Paul is doing that as well. I love the fact that they also, Aubrey Marcus states that psychedelics he wouldn't recommend for everybody, but breath work he would recommend to 100 out of 100 people. And it's something you forget just how much that just keeps you in tune with the present moment. Another thing Jake says, which I really agreed with, is being in the present moment is essential, pretty much essential. Obviously you should be thinking about the future and like what you want out of life, what sort of life do you want to lead, but right now, this is all that there is. This is the universe, this is God, this is you, this is me. Or is it? I don't know. We're all trying to figure this stuff out. I'll never say anything concrete because at the end of the day, I don't know. It's just fun to think about. But all that really matters to me is that psychedelics are healing some of the most twisted, strangest minds in our cultural sphere at the minute, which is a great news for everybody, and I'm very happy for them. I wish them all the best. See you in the next one, guys.